Well, thank you guys so much for sticking around. I know it's at the end of the day and we'll try to make this as lively as possible, but my name's Juliette Edwards, Chief Development Officer for the Nuclear Company, and I'm also the U.S. Women in Nuclear Chair. And so it's very exciting to talk about a topic that's very near and dear to all of our hearts, and actually we're going to do things a little bit differently. To really penetrate your psyche, we're going to use the art of storytelling, and really to start off with the way we introduce ourselves is how did we get into nuclear? Because I think that there's takeaways there, right, on how you can recruit. And sometimes it's not a traditional path. Sometimes it's not a job posting on LinkedIn or through any type of portal. Sometimes it's just a happen chance scenario, which is mine. So I'll go ahead and start how I got into the industry. It started out actually in high school. I came from a phosphate mining industry where there was, unfortunately, a very Aaron Brockovich type moment for those that know that movie. We had a tritium leak contaminated our groundwater, resulted in myself and my entire graduating class almost having cancer. I have a special needs daughter because of it. And I remember going through the application process to get an education, go into undergrad. They were wanting to sponsor a lot of our students. And I remember Googling with a guidance counselor, what is the exact opposite of this industry and this company, because I don't want to go into that. I want to do something different. And nuclear popped up. And I forgot that conversation until I later was about to graduate college, where I majored in marketing and finance, so not a tech person at all, really good at telling stories and connecting people. My dad would say I'm good at bullshit, but anyways. I was a waitress at a restaurant called Bonefish Grill in Florida, and one of my tables one night was a gentleman that wanted to start a nuclear distribution business, and literally hired me from the restaurant full-time, and I went into sales and started auditing steel mills overseas and then domestically to go certify all of these facilities to go be NQA1 and ASME certified, and I just fell in love with the industry, how safe people were, how just they strive for excellence, the amount of knowledge sharing and transparency was just something I had always thrived and really wanted to be a part of. So all that to say, pay closer attention to your waiters and waitresses. And definitely lean into the guidance counselors, not having to default to a Google search. Maybe we should help with the curriculum. So perfect point to introduce you now.
Wonderful.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I am the Director for Outreach, Retention, and Engagement at North Carolina State University. And my husband got recruited by an IT firm, and I had been working at the university up in Ottawa, Canada. So I'm so happy to see so many Canadians represented. And I said yes, right? So we came down one winter, and it was much warmer here than it was there, and I said, oh, there's enough universities here, I will land accordingly. So we moved down here, and I applied for a job in that department, and I got one of those Dear Jane letters. This is not really a good match, but we're going to keep your resume on file. And I went, yeah, right. And then a few weeks later, they then sent me a letter saying, we'd like you to apply for a newly created position. They were interested in increasing the number of students in the undergraduate and graduate programs. And this is back in 2001. And I said, well, yeah, I want to be at an engineering school again. And I applied, and I have been in that position ever since. What is really nice is that it's a new position, so you don't have to hear individuals compare you to anyone else, right? So it started looking at outreach, and then it expanded for recruitment. And before I knew it, you're doing retention initiatives as well. And then I walked into my department head's office. I had a question. I still don't remember what that question was. He looked up and he had this glee in his eyes, and he said, do you want to teach? And I said, of course, yes, right? And he went back. He was an introvert, right? So he went back looking at what he was doing. So I said, I think I've been dismissed. So I left, and then my immediate manager sat me down, and we chatted about the first year engineering program and what we were trying to do. So all the students come into this broad engineering. Some of them know what they want to do, some don't know what they want to do. And by teaching a number of courses, then we're able then to hopefully, some will come our way, and just in general help students to find their particular path. And I remembered that that was done for me many years ago, and I wanted to continue to do that. Fast forward, and I'm involved with the American Nuclear Society since 2005, rolling up my sleeve and working on lesson plans and thinking about how then do we introduce this to the pre-college grouping and community college grouping. And before I knew it, I'm chair of the Education, Training, and Workforce Development. They're asking me to run for the board of directors. And then last year, or 2 years ago, I became president-elect, and then I'm serving as a president this year and then past president next year. And then you're looking at continuing on with my own personal development and work within the field. And as of last year, I became an assistant extension professor. So we're a land-grant university. So whatever we're doing in way of research and development, we need to then share it with community. And that can be at the international, national, or local community level. So I'm all excited about that because then we're looking at engagement, right? How then does energy and then also the other uses, non-electric uses of the technology have a fundamental impact on the lives of individuals in my community and then in my larger community. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm here to answer some questions. So I'm going to pass this on to you next, Juliette.
Hello, everyone. First, I would like to thank the organization to invite me to this panel. It was really unexpected, but I flew all the way from Bridgewater, Somerset, where we are building 2 EPRs right now, the EDF. About my story, well, it's a bit complicated. I was born in Japan, and then I moved to Hong Kong just before Fukushima. Wow. And when I was in Hong Kong, it was kind of a big catastrophe that happened, but I was only 11 years old. So then during several years, there was a lot of taboo around nuclear, and I didn't really know about it. When I decided to become an engineer, I decided to go to France because I thought it was the best way to get a good education for free. Because France is a really good country for this. If you want to study science, you don't have to pay so many fees. Nice. And I did this 2-year prépa, what they call in France. It's 2 years of intensive preparation to ranking exams that are going to take you to an engineering school. And the engineering school I chose was about climate change and energy and water, how to manage the end of the world, basically. No, not getting in the end of the world, but whatever. And I got into nuclear because I chose an introduction course during my first year of engineering school, and it was a teacher that was just having a paper and a pen, just explaining the facts about nuclear, the figures, how low carbon it is, how compact it is, how economically viable it is. I was completely seduced by it, and I became completely obsessed by it, like my teachers. So that's nice. How I got into nuclear. And when I finished my studies, I wanted to go abroad, and I just hopped on the Hinkley Point C project.
Now you're at Hinkley Point today.
Yeah.
Nice.
I thought it would be a good adventure, so...
Yeah, all right.
You're right. My origin story is far less exciting than that, no doubt. I'm 25 years in the staffing industry, and whilst I'm not an engineer, I was always fascinated with engineering. My dad really was. And about 10 years into my career, I had an opportunity to come and work for Rullion. I didn't really know at the time that just, about the nuclear industry, but I knew I wanted to be involved in engineering. And we had about maybe 250 people working for us at the time on nuclear licensed sites around the UK. I was, I think, like you, in a sales position at the time. Yeah. And after a while, we lived in Manchester, in the city, We've got young children, 2 daughters, and I was super keen for my kids to not grow up in the city. I wanted them to grow up a bit slower than you would if you grew up in Manchester. And I had the opportunity to take over our nuclear business at our office, which is based near Sellafield in the English Lake District, which I really thought was the best place to bring up 2 daughters. And I was right. You know, it's been an absolutely beautiful place to live, but it's what kept me in the industry, because I fell in love with the people. You know, I think like a lot of nuclear communities, they are groups of individuals that grow up and live in and around the facilities, and that is certainly the case in that instance. So it was certainly that community that kept me in the industry for what is now 14 years, and we're 1,800 contractors now. So that's why I'm here.
It's a good story. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as all of ours, but it's just unique how we all kind of fall into this industry. Here in the US, there was a study done recently by NEI, Nuclear Energy Institute. It's a strategic workforce plan that laid out a ton of data. Like, what are we actually going to see in terms of demographic shifts, generational shifts? And one of the things that stuck out to me was by next year, 40% of our US workforce will be made up of millennials. So this discussion, the solutions we're going to start talking about so that you guys can take these away to your organizations and to your individual companies is, you know, what are some interesting hiring practices, recruiting practices, and retention practices for the next generation? Since it's going to be such a large number made up of our population. So another story I will start off with in terms of solutions is you have 2 daughters. Do you guys have brothers and sisters?
Yes.
I have, yes.
Okay. I've recruited 2 of my 3 brothers into the industry. So if you can't like recruit everybody, you just start going within the family and friends, which is what I've done. And the way I got one of my youngest brothers into the industry is, actually I should say he got himself into, was I would come home every night from sales and I would be complaining about some buyer or some company that wouldn't, you know, take my service or sign a contract with me. And my youngest brother's 10 years apart from me said, I want to be the guy that says no to you. Like, what is that job? And I said, supply chain. And he went and majored in supply chain. So I just kept making sure he was at all the companies that I was affiliated with so that I would never have to negotiate against him, because I'm not going to let him win on that. But we talk about like just conversations, like making sure that it's something that is always discussed around the dinner table, at the gym, wherever you guys have a social life. And so would love to know, in your own working lives and professional and personal, like how do you kind of weave in the conversation about nuclear so people become more curious and we start demystifying, you know, the facts about nuclear waste? Would love to kind of open it up to anybody before we get into more of the targeted questions.
Sure. So when I talk with students or with educators or other stakeholders, right, to me it's very important to listen. Listen to understand, not listen to respond to them, right? And we need to do this a whole lot more, right? Because sometimes we have a PowerPoint and it's death by PowerPoint. We need to get through all the information that's possible that we think that they need to know. But you're really building a relationship with the individual, and it may be one touch point, and then they go and they tell another, right? And then you have another come to chat with you, or talk to someone in your department about what nuclear engineering is all about. So I am very much relationship building. So even with our students, and this is running from the pre-college space to the undergraduate to the graduate, if they have questions and I'm busy running off to somewhere else, it's walk and talk. Right? You ask your question as we're moving along. You're walking with me, or we've decided that we're going to go have some tea, right? And you can talk about anything, right? Because I think sometimes we forget that we're all human, and that these millennials have certain other pressures in their lives. They went through COVID, they're coming out at the other end, and they've got some really big questions. What do I want to do with my life? And in the past, we had lesser choices, right? Now they've got quite a bit of choices, so sometimes they get paralyzed by that. So to be able to have an open door policy, to sit and chat with them. And what I really like is that as they've graduated and gone into industry on all levels, right? So your labs, your utilities, and then also companies, that they're willing to give back. So I always say about paying it forward, and those students will come back into the department, or they will call or send a message saying that, hey, did you hear that we've increased the number of co-ops or internships that we have, and they're wanting to come back and have a discussion with us. I remember one particular student, and something about this industry, you're very introverted, right? And he's walking down the hallway, and you could see he's going to take some deep breaths because you're going to run into me, and I'm going to say, hi, how are you? And you just don't say fine, right? And it's like, I'm fine too. Right, just to start to get them into the habit of that interaction. Because that's the other part of what we need to do, right? So if we're going out into communities to have a conversation, we need to feel comfortable talking with individuals. And you can practice that in our setting, right? With individuals. And you fast forward, he's finished his PhD as a national laboratory, and I get a call and he says, hey, I'm coming to recruit. And I went, what? Because I remember when he's gotten better, right? But then I remember, and it's like, but he's worked on it, right? And there's a safe space, and you know that there are resources that are available. So I think about what we do in the American Nuclear Society and the lesson plans, peer-to-peer counseling, et cetera, right? There's a number of different pieces. They can go into technical divisions, or they can go into committees, right? And there's an opportunity just to perfect and to give back. And it's nice to see when that happens, because they're realizing what kind of relationship. It's all about the relationship, right? It's about us sitting down and having a conversation, and then those questions that they've always wanted to ask, they come out naturally. It's like, hey, you're a nuclear engineer. I had a question. Right? And then be able to answer those questions, whether it's a technical or it's just something more general, right? So whether we're talking about financing, it's like, well, how come we're not building? I understand X, Y, Z, right? That these are things that they would not normally ask, but you leave the door open for it to happen.
I hear that a lot from students, though, is that when they feel like they're in a professional setting, it has to be a transactional conversation, right? Like you can't apply the same principles and methods and conversational type approach that you're talking about that you do in your personal life and your work life. And I think that bifurcation just needs to be debunked, because I think you're so right. Everything I've ever done is relationship based and being very genuine to who I am, and not turning a switch that, no, this is business mommy talking. You have to realize that you're just one person, and that approach that you have used to this point in your career is going to continue to be beneficial to you. So love that, being relationship centric, even in the office and on campus.
Yes.
Anything from you, Juliette?
Not so much about recruiting or something, because I'm more the opposite side. But when I became obsessed with nuclear during my studies, of course, I talked a lot at home with friends about nuclear, and I tried to convince them as much as I could with the facts.
Yeah.
But and now they ask me questions, so it's really nice, because they are actually curious about it.
Yeah.
They want to know more. They want to understand the articles they are reading. So I think it's a really good sign, and I've done a good job.
I like it.
I live in the British equivalent of Homer Simpson and Springfields. So I spend all my time trying to avoid talking about the nuclear industry, because all of my friends work within it.
Gotcha.
It's almost impossible, apart from my uni friends, it's almost impossible to avoid it. If you go down to the local gym, like you bump into someone from Westinghouse, or you bump into someone from Springfield, from Sellafield. So it's very, very difficult. If I'm speaking to somebody new and I want to try and inspire them, I tend to go down the road of speaking about the diversity of the nuclear industry, because a lot of people think it is just about nuclear energy. And certainly in my work, it absolutely isn't just that. Yeah. You know, we're very much involved in robotics and radiological applications. We're involved in defense applications, in other research and development. fusion. And when you start to talk to people about the nuclear industry in that level of scope, I think it starts to get really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, thank you guys for sharing those. Let's pivot maybe to some solution sets that are available at our fingertips. I know the U.S. government here has just put out, or is about to put out, a solicitation for a $100 million award focused on workforce, investing either in manufacturing, the trades, apprenticeship. And it's kind of like, how do you make the best recommendation? How is that money divvied up so it can be strategically used to bring back more manufacturing, increase head of household jobs around nuclear? Just curious, like, where you think those government grants could be spent and used wisely. Again, maybe I'll start with you, Lisa. You've got probably a million stories from students kind of going into the workforce and things they wish were more efficient or perhaps more visible. Do you think there's anything that we should maybe focus that government funding into that you've seen from personal history and experience? Or, yeah, we'll start there.
So 2 things. One, when you look at 3 things, scholarships, right? Because you're looking at the impact, the dollars for community college and as well as universities, they're not going down, right? So how then do we support the students so they're not having a second and third job and also trying to study some coursework that can be challenging at times, right? We want them to focus in. So scholarships is one of them. And then also to have some experiences outside of the classroom. So I am always about co-curricular programming, right? So you're looking at study abroad programs, you're looking at industrial field trips, things of that nature. And there's one big aspect that I think that we should spend a little bit more time on is that generational impact and who is with these students day in, day out, right? Either in the classroom or informally, right? So how can then we support them with the curriculum, with hands-on activities, right? So A&S puts out this cloud chamber, and we used to, you sign it out, and then it comes back in. I'm just like, why are we, I don't want it, right? It should stay in the schools so that then it can be used time and time again. And then not to target only your science classes, but then also your non-science classes, because then it reinforces what is going on, right? And it's a combination of both social and technical for our industry, and we've been talking about that all day. So how then can we have that in the environmental science class as well as the environmental studies class? How can we have it in a political science, AP political science class, or history class, just as we have it in chemistry and biology, and also in physics, right? So to the development of those particular programs and those instruments that then we're helping educators to feel comfortable with it. So we do a 2-week workshop at NC State with teachers, and the one thing that comes out of the assessments is that I feel comfortable now with the material. And if I'm not feeling comfortable with it, I know that any one of the faculty members is only a phone call away, right? Or students only a phone call away. They can come into the classes, talk about their experiences, or they can come into our department. What's really cool about our department is that you've got a research reactor. I can kind of step back at times and let it sell itself, right? But as you are asking questions and you're discussing it, they are then they're absorbing everything, and then we talk about reactor operations class, and they could become licensed operators, and you just see the light go off, right? Mm-hmm. And it's an entry point to kind of add to what was said earlier. To me, it's an expansion of the industry, the enterprise. It is not a renaissance. It is not a start again. It is an expansion of what we do, and to be able to say that definitively to a student. You have medical, you have other industrial applications, you've got a number of occupations within power production, you have land, sea, and space. So, at the end of a conversation with a student, they're like, oh wow, I didn't know that this all existed. Yeah. And I feel as if we've done our job because every aspect of what we're about requires more workforce, right? We need human capacity building. And it's nice to be able to show the vastness of what we do, and that it's not only nuclear, but it's also mechanical. It's industrial, literally all of the engineering science and social science fields, right? So I had one student who she was doing okay on the engineering side, but she was excelling on the political side, the public policy side. So she took up some more classes and decided I'm going to make the switch to my major, and then my minor will be in nuclear engineering. And she's realizing just by having that combination, she is of more benefit to industry and to public policy individuals and companies, et cetera. And you just see the shoulders go back, because I know some of the technical. Maybe it wasn't all for me, but I can use that technical in the social science spaces.
Absolutely. It's good to, we spoke a little bit about mentors and people that kind of pulled you in, and back to the relationships. Juliette, you had mentioned, I think it was a couple days ago, that mentorship meant a lot to you, and I think it's a big driver. And quite frankly, I've had a ton in my career, both inside the company and outside the company, organic, inorganic, structured programs, non-structured. And I think all those are extremely important, because at the end of the day, it's about human connection and taking the time to listen and help guide someone based on what their internal risk assessments and limits are as a human, and where they want to stretch and flex themselves professionally. So can you speak a little bit about just who influenced you and why mentorship means so much to you?
Yeah, I think it's a really important thing, mentoring in general. When I was in high school, before I wanted to be an engineer, we had a panel where there was researchers from Tara Ocean. It's a boat that goes around the world and that just takes on planktons to analyze climate change, the effects of climate change on the sea. And honestly, I was completely absorbed by their speech, and it made me dream of participating to tackle climate change, and it made me really passionate about science. And that was the first, I think that was the first moment when I really wanted to be in science. So a big trigger. And then obviously there were my teachers who were completely passionate about their subject. And then again, when I arrived in HPC, I was surrounded by so many wonderful colleagues. And I had the opportunity to participate in an award that is organized by EDF and Women in Nuclear France, which is called Femmes Energia. So it's an award that was created to celebrate the women who were working in nuclear all around France, but we were kind of a French team too. So we built a team of 11 women, and we successfully had a jury's special prize. So we were very proud. But the main thing about this was because we had to do a video, we had to do some paperwork, everything. And we got together. I was the youngest one, and I was just surrounded by all these colleagues who had wonderful stories. And the other thing about this award is that I mentioned earlier to my colleague Karin that when she talked about the EDF organizing trainings for welders, well, actually last year, Femmes Energia Award for the young woman was a welder. And I was really, really proud of that we had some women welders in France, in EDF, because I don't see one in HPC. Wow. For the mentoring part on my side, I do a lot of STEM online. There are a lot of platforms in France where you can just speak online to middle school students. Yeah. And one feedback I got one day, I was very touched. I couldn't see their cameras, but the teacher said to me, "Oh, you can't believe what you did to my students. All the girls, they had sparkles in their eyes." And I was so happy, because that's what I want to do when I mentor, when I speak to those children, is that I want to make them dream of being an engineer the same way I was dreaming of becoming an engineer. So it was, I was really, really, really proud at that moment.
I bet your family was proud as well.
And also, yes, I didn't mention, but I'm part of that Women in Nuclear UK and France mentoring program. Mm-hmm. It's about bringing the two countries together and try to exchange like between a young woman from France or with a more experienced woman for the other country. And I'm mentored by a really wonderful woman from Framatome, and I learn a lot about her. We have calls, it's like it's like sessions of 1 hour per month. Yes. You just talk about what you face as a woman in your industry, and you have some nice advice.
Just quick tools just to pull from, and somebody else has it because they've already experienced it for 25 years.
And it just comes like that in the conversation. You just sit one moment with the person who is mentoring you, and you get out of it. You feel so powerful. So I think it's really powerful. All the networks we're building is important.
Confidence builder for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about recruitment. So what are you seeing in terms of, I don't know, average hiring times, and maybe perhaps organizations that are doing it right, and what are some solutions that you would offer to folks that are very quick, easy wins that they could implement into their organizations versus ones that may take a little bit longer? Can you give us a little bit of sense of that?
Yeah, so I think it depends what we mean by right. I see a huge amount of intent and positivity around everyone in the industry trying to drive more and more people into the industry. But when we look at it at the sort of scale that we need to attract people to the industry, I don't think anybody's getting it right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's harsh to say. Well, and of course, in the context of the conversation today, the predictability of projects and the surety of the finance help organisations to think long term. Mm-hmm. And that lack of long-term thinking is probably the thing that stops us being able to get it right. You know, it's not through lack of trying. It's just, you know, really understanding the workforce plan at a macro scale, at a country scale, is impossible. Possibly.
Yeah.
Impossible, possibly. That doesn't make sense. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
You know, it's really, really difficult. So it's very, very difficult to get something right when you don't actually fully know what the problem is, what the task at hand is. Mm-hmm. As far as hiring times is concerned, you know, the nuclear industry is notoriously slow.
Like 90 days is, I think, a number I just heard it. From like the day you post a position to the day you have somebody in the seat is like maybe even advantageous. I'm not really sure, but 90 days is what I was told was the average that we have right now as an industry.
Yeah,
so it seems like a long time.
It's a hugely long time, and actually it's shorter in the US than it is in the UK. Quite a few people that we're dealing with will have 3-month notice periods, which is unheard of in the US. Or may be contradicting in that.
I think 2 weeks is the norm, but I mean, people try to give a little bit more depending on senior.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, our average time to hire, we place around 650 permanent people a year in various different jobs across the nuclear industry, excluding early careers. So these are experienced people. Mm-hmm. The average across that is about 90 days, but it can be 9 months. And it's very, very difficult for an individual to plan their life around a hiring time like that. This is in part driven by the fact that often, well, almost always, we're taking somebody from a role that they're already in. Due to the nature of the industry, most people are in employment. You know, so because we're taking people out of a pre-existing role, they're not just sat there waiting to start immediately. Mm-hmm. Once you add a protracted interview process and decision-making process and a security screen and a notice period, it can be a huge period of time. So we can do a refuel outage on one of our reactors and quicker. We can refuel a reactor quicker than we can actually start hiring people. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, the way that we can exert some influence on that is by treating the recruitment process as a project rather than as an administrative task. Mm-hmm. You know, our industry is built around projects, but But those people that are in the process from the client side or from the organizational side, you've got your day job to do. So it can be difficult to prioritize the hiring process as the most important thing. Mm-hmm. Where we do that, where with clients that we work with, where we are laying out the recruitment timeline before we even start the process as a project. Yeah. Literally recruitment by Gantt chart. Wow. Then 6 to 8 weeks pretty consistently. For organizations that we work with like that, we're filling around 65 to 75% of the roles first time. So it can be quite quick, but everyone involved in the process needs to be 100% invested in it, and it's got to be the main priority.
Interesting. No, thank you for that feedback. I think we got time for one more question, and I may pose it to you, Justin. When you do have interest from folks that want to go into the nuclear industry, are you seeing a shift that they want to go into something because it's more purpose-driven for them, or is it because they're just trying to, plug a technical capability and proficiency that they have into a specific role? I'm personally seeing, because we're hiring a lot right now, folks that just want to be behind something that's going to actually make change, that's going to build and construct nuclear, and they want to be tied to that because they know it's going to be enormous growth, enormous challenge, a huge challenge for them personally and professionally, and they want to be able to stretch themselves. And very few organizations right now are really having a solid plan to put a shovel in the ground and to put clean electrons online. So I'm just curious if you're seeing a pivot where the younger generation is after nuclear jobs because they feel like it's a part of something bigger than themselves.
That is absolutely the case, yeah, for sure. And there's no real shortage of people wanting to get into the industry, from what I see. Yeah. One of my teams administers the process of early careers for EDF in the UK. We're placing around 300 people in internships, graduate positions and apprenticeships in the UK. And we're processing several thousand applications. There's no shortage of people wanting to get involved. Now, of course, there's a selection process in that's important to consider. One thing that I think is worthy of note is it's less about the money and more about the purpose and the opportunity and the working environment.
Great.
I think the latter of those is the one that we can really work on.
Yeah, can I just
Yeah,
interrupt?
do, yeah.
I know it's not only, it's about the purpose, of course, but you don't have to forget that we also, it's also about the money.
I didn't say it wasn't about the money.
She's like,
you don't need any money, do you?
Because no, I mean, I'm not complaining. I think it's it's financially speaking, I'm really happy. I'm well paid in EDF. But I meant that it just has to stay competitive compared to other sectors, and we need to make sure that the salaries are still competitive in 10 years. Otherwise, people will say, "Oh no, I don't want to go there because I want to do this project and I don't want to sacrifice this project for nuclear." I know that nuclear is a very big part of my life, and honestly I don't know what I would do if I weren't doing nuclear. But let's not forget that we have also life after work.
This is absolutely reflected in our data. And the initial entry to the job is less about money. And then you realise the contribution that you're making, the work that you're putting in.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. All right, I'm getting the wave, but totally show me the money. I'm with you, girl. It's a financing summit after all.
Exactly.
Thank you guys all for your time. That will conclude our event, and I will let the voice of God tell you where you're going next. Thank you.
Thank you.